Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Morning and welcome to FantasyGuru.com's Fantasy Sports Daily. Presented to you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, each week at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm your host, Ray Flowers. You can find me at FantasyGuru.com. You can find me on the social media verses at The Ray Flowers. I'm always in the chat room over at FantasyGuru.com. So if you got any questions, concerns, thing you want to ask, that's the place to be. Before we dive into anything on the show today, you'll see it there on the screen right now. We have the special going right now at FantasyGuru.com. Do you like my sharks, by the way? My sharks on my sweatshirt? Yeah. Sharks and stars. Let's go for it, kids. You looking for some help in football? You looking for a way to extend your fun in football this year? Maybe your seasonal team's not doing well and it's not looking good. And you're not ready to call it quits on the football season and you'd like to get involved with the DFS game. Maybe you're thinking about getting involved with the betting side of things. Maybe things are going great and you don't have time to do DFS because your seasonal team is doing so well, but you're feeling good. The wave, you want to keep it going. You want to get involved in wagering. Right now at FantasyGuru.com, top right of the page, click on the subscribe tab. You can sign up for our football products for $99 for everything the rest of the way. The only thing you don't get is the Super Bowl betting guide. That's its own separate thing. But other than the Super Bowl betting guide, you get everything we have at FantasyGuru.com football related from now through the season. $99.99. That's it. Seasonal football, check. DFS football, check. Wagering football, check. All of them. All the articles, all the rankings, all the discussions, all the chat rooms, all the live streams, all of it at FantasyGuru.com. Subscribe tab in the top right corner. Head over to the site, get signed up, get the product in your hands, and have success here during the holiday season with fantasy football in 2024. Again, I'm Ray Flowers at FG. I'm here every day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Festerman's here tomorrow. He's here every Wednesday each week. On Wednesdays, I'm with Jeff Manns on the Elite Sports Show. That's on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, 3 to 6, Monday through Friday with Jeff. I'm on every Wednesday. So I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, I'm over there on SiriusXM. What are we talking about today? Well, we had a football game last night. Monday Night Football, we had the Battle of Texas, and it was predictably a one-sided affair. One team moved to 7-4, the other fell to 3-7. We'll talk about that matchup last night. Texans defeating the Cowboys 34-10. What are some of the takeaways from the game? We'll talk about some changes at the quarterback position. We talked about Tommy DeVito, the new quarterback of the Giants, yesterday on the show. Today we'll talk about Gardner Minshew and Bryce Young continuing their runs as the starting quarterbacks for their teams. We'll dive into some NFL news. Is Jayden Daniels hurt? Talk a little bit about that. What's going on in the Denver backfield? I already see a question that popped up asking about the Denver backfield. We'll talk about that. We talked about it yesterday. We'll talk about it a little bit more today. Adam Thielen, Jonathan Brooks look like they're ready to go finally for the Panthers this week. What's the outlook of Nick Chubb the rest of the way? Health updates on Gabe Davis, Darnell Mooney, and Mike Evans. And about 25-30 minutes from now, we'll visit with Armando Marsal. He comes on every Tuesday to talk waiver wire. So Armando's on every Tuesday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, talking waivers. Wednesday, it's Rich Miletto and Justin Fensterman. Thursdays, it's me and Tyler Beaker. We talk Thursday Night Football, kind of give a preview of that. Fridays, it's me and Russell Clay, and we talk a little bit about everything. Waiver wire, we'll talk a little bit about seasonal, we'll talk a little bit about dynasty. So Tuesday through Friday, the finest of FantasyGuru.com joining us here on the Elite Sports Show. You can also leave your comments and your questions if you're watching live at Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, on YouTube at YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. You can watch us live, Fantasy Guru's site on Twitter X. I actually saw a couple days ago some comments there. So again, maybe that works. That was something that the program we're using was working on integrating. But you can always leave comments live on Facebook and YouTube, maybe on Twitter X. You can also type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your local podcast network. You can find us there, take us with you on the go. You can always go to the top of the page at FantasyGuru.com, Elite Plus. Click on that, and you can find this show as well as the other shows on the Elite Plus network. All right, so let's get into it here. What happened last night in the game? As I said, the game went according to expectations. The Texans, beat a undermanned, reeling Cowboys team. I think the Cowboys have lost 5 games in a row. Cowboys stink right now. Texans are a pretty good football team, and we saw that last night in that 34-10 victory. Start out with the losing side of things with Dallas. Cooper Rush, on the surface, 354 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. okay. That's actually probably better than anyone had expected. Even with the game flow likely to go in the direction of the Cowboys needing to play catch up, it was still a pretty solid outing. Now, he took 55 passes to do that. So 6.2 yards an attempt or whatever is a bad number. Beyond that, while it might be in some circles considered good football, and there were some injuries, obviously the team was dealing with. They lost Jake Ferguson last night. Cooper Rush completed the ball to 12 guys. If you complete passes to 12 people, you have no offense. It's too much. I mean, it's just, there are certain teams like the Rams and the Falcons and the Niners, like it's very pyramidal, right? There's only 5 guys a week to catch passes. And everyone else is kind of in the middle-ish. 12 guys last night, it's just too much. And it doesn't matter if it's, it doesn't matter if the scenarios were behind by, 3 touchdowns and we're just getting guys work. It's too much. Your offense is not working if 12 separate guys are catching passes. Obviously. Again, they threw 55 passes last night and scored 10 points. So what we saw from Cooper Rush last night was much better than his first effort. And it's about that level of performance, not that level of volume, but that level of performance is about what should be expected for him. Now, after the game, Mike McCarthy said, look, the one thing I kind of regret is I didn't get Trey Lance some work there toward the end of the game. I don't know how much longer. Cooper Rush is not the answer, right? He's not the answer, and the Cowboys are 3-7. They're not making the playoffs. So the real question is here, real question here is, how long do they avoid using Trey Lance, really? Because if Rush or Lance is the future, not that either is. But if either one of these is the future, it is Lance. And if they really want to win football games, why not just go for it with Trey Lance? Now, Trey Lance hasn't, I've been wrong about a lot of guys. Never been wrong about Trey Lance. And he was drafted by the 49ers. The 49ers overpaid for Trey Lance. Said all leading up to his start with the Niners, like, what are they doing? The guy hasn't played in college football. COVID hit. He hadn't played in a year and a half. He hasn't played in the NFL. He hasn't done any. He really hasn't played legitimately football in 5 years? On a week basis. Like, he hasn't played in 5 years. So, we know the skills are there. Very Colin Kaepernick-like, another 49er quarterback, right? Got the wheels, got the arm. If you're in a super flex league, adding Trey Lance is not a bad idea. Because again, Cooper Rush is just your passing time. Not that they've made no announcements or suggestions that Cooper Rush is going to lose the starting gig because Dak Prescott's obviously done for the season. They made no comments that they're going to Trey Lance, but just me to you, right? If you got to use Cooper Rush because you've got a desperation guy, I get it in a 2 QB league. In a super flex league, if you have an extra bench spot in a super flex league or even a 2 quarterback league, Trey Lance, man, it may not pay off at all, but it can't be any worse than Cooper Rush if he's active. And if he's active, it's probably going to be better. So keep that in mind. CeeDee Lamb was seen voicing his displeasure last night. Not a surprise. CeeDee Lamb played through his injury. A lot of people were concerned. I got 75 questions, 100 questions about CeeDee Lamb on Sunday. What do we do with CeeDee Lamb? I said almost everyone play him. He went out, didn't have a great game, but he had a 13-yard carry. He caught 8 balls for 93 yards. He got you 18 points. It's fine. It's basically what he's been doing all year long. It's the same thing. And he was unhappy with the way the offense and Cooper Rush. And okay, I don't know how long this goes with Lamb. Like, I don't know. Is there going to be an injury here? Is he going to make it through the season? I don't know. He's obviously very frustrated right now. But the fact is, he produced 8 catches for 93 yards last night, and that's about where we're going to be with him. The touchdowns are probably going to be hit or miss with either Lance or Rush. But obviously, CeeDee Lamb is still a starter. I guess the concern was just merely was he going to play because he didn't have a pivot on Monday night and all of that. But all the reports suggested he'd be fine and play through his injury. He did. Full complement of snaps, full complement of targets, 12 of them last night. Still a guy you start every week without question. All right, Jake Ferguson caught a ball last night, 11-yard catch, had a concussion, boom. Obviously, they played on Monday Night Football. They are not one of the teams on a bye this week. So the Cowboys only have 6 days until the next game. Will Ferguson be cleared from the concussion protocol? We see it happen all the time. I've said it a lot. A guy gets a concussion in baseball, he's out longer than 6 days. A guy gets a concussion in hockey, he's out longer than 6 days. Football, sometimes they get back. I don't know. I think on a short week, it's risky. Luke Schoonmaker, obviously last night, stepped up 10 targets. Remember, they threw it 55 times. But 10 targets, 6 of them were caught for 56 yards. really solid effort in a very eerily reminiscent Jake Ferguson type of game, right? And it just goes to underscore a couple of things. One, if you throw the ball 55 times, even if you're throwing it to 12 guys, people are going to get targets. 10 targets to a tight end is a lot, too much, but it's a lot. However, the tight end position really, primarily Jake Ferguson, but the tight end position with the Cowboys this year has been that second wide receiver. It's been Brandon Cooks at times. It's been Jalen Tolbert. Like, guys, it was Turpin last night had a touchdown, but he's not a guy that we want to lean on. We'll talk about him in a sec. The bottom line is this offense and the way it's constructed will throw the ball to the tight end. So whether it's Ferguson or Schoonmaker, there's not a tremendous amount of difference because it's not like Ferguson is a George Kittle type of dynamic playmaker, right? He's running 7-yard curls and catching the ball. Schoonmaker can do that. It's not like Ferguson's a big touchdown maker. He hasn't scored a touchdown in 500 years. Exaggeration. So bottom line is we'll talk to Armando Marsal. Is Schoonmaker someone to pick up with the likelihood that Ferguson's not going to be active this weekend? We'll discuss that moving forward. Back to Turpin. Turpin had a 64-yard touchdown. I don't know, what was 58 yards of that after the catch? I don't know. I mean, it wasn't some great throw. It was Turpin running open in the field. So he got in the end zone. It catches your attention. It's the only touchdown they scored. Only 3 targets, though, for him. Only those 3 catches. He is a kick returner who sporadically touches the football on offense. Frankly, none of the pass catchers with this team, other than CeeDee Lamb and the tight end, no one else on this team I have any interest in the fantasy space. Now, it's by Mageddon this week, right? So, maybe some of you are going to, and we'll talk about this with Armando. We'll talk about this through the week here on the show over at fantasyguru.com. You got to do what you got to do. But, I mean, Flournoy, 3 targets. Tolbert, 5 targets, only 2 catches. Tolbert can't get to 38 yards. Like, he's the number 2 receiver for this team. He can't ever get to 40 yards. Like, it's crazy. Turpin, you got Mingo, who had 4 targets last night, didn't catch any of them. There's nobody here other than the tight end and CeeDee Lamb that you can count on to use. And so no matter who it is with the Cowboys, we could talk about all the players that I just mentioned in more depth. Using any of them in this week, I mean, I can't recommend it, even with all the teams on bye. Now, Rico Dowdle, let's talk a little bit about the backfield because we've had a little bit of back and forth here. Rico Dowdle is clearly the number 1 running back for the Cowboys. In the past, the number 1 Cowboy running back has been not only a number 1 running back in the NFL, he's been a superstar in the fantasy space. The number 1 running back for the Cowboys runs for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns every year. This team does not run the football effectively at all. Rico Dowdle is not that guy. And we saw it again last night. They had 1 player last night run the ball for 15 yards. And before you say, well, Ray, they were getting killed, they didn't run the football. True. Rico Dowdle is likely to run for 28 yards as he is to run for 55 yards. Go look at the numbers. It's just the way it is. The only thing that Dowdle really brings in the fantasy space is the ability to catch a pass. He's got 5 catches in 2 of 4 games, excuse me. He does nothing. Nothing. This week, maybe he's a start. Okay, maybe. Last night, though, they did give more run to Ezekiel Elliott. They did get Jauan involved. He had his first touches in months. Because obviously the game flow. Dowdle is still the guy, and he's still nothing but a flex option. I know he's had a couple of nice games. I know people have tried to make him a thing, but Rico Dowdle's not a thing. Even this week, he's a flex option. Like, what do we have in the early rankings over at fantasyguru.com? Let's pull it up. They always get posted at like 4 in the morning. Actually, they were posted at 3:18 in the morning. Jeff never goes to sleep, Jeff Mans. So the rankings went up last night at 3:18 in the morning. Rico Dowdle right now is running back 26. And that's with 6 teams on a bye. He's just a guy. On the other side of things, again, the Texans won this football game as expected. The big story was the return of Nico Collins. He was said before the game that he was going to play a full complement of snaps. He did not. I think that has to do with the game flow scenario. He was actually 3rd on the team in both routes run and snap share behind both Mechie and Dell at the wide receiver position. He didn't even play half the snaps. Stroud played 63 snaps. Nico played 30. Again, they were handily winning this game, so I think they just backed off him a little bit to give him some rest. I think next time out, he's playing his 80% of snaps per normal. In the end, both Dell and Collins had 7 targets each, 4 catches each, and 54 yards each. So they do each other to a draw, if you will, a standstill here. But you all saw the game, right? And if you didn't see the game, you've seen the highlights or you've read about it. Right, first drive of the game for the Texans, first play from scrimmage, 77-yard touchdown to Nico Collins. Called back on a penalty. And this is so frustrating because, again, 4 catches for 54 yards, okay, right? It's his first game back, okay. So he gives you 9.5 points. It should have been over 20. And this, it's so frustrating because Nico Collins is a wide receiver 1, right? That's what he was before the injury. That's what he's expected to be moving forward. And he scored half as many points last night as he would have if that one play counted. So they didn't even get half as many points. What am I saying? The touchdown, 77 yards, and the touchdown's 13.6. He had 9.4 or whatever, 9.8. So didn't even get, he could have more than doubled his play on that one catch. Again, this happens. That's why it's so important to read the Armando Marcel's recap piece on Mondays, the plays you missed that Jeff Mans puts in there. He talks about it on the radio show. I try to sprinkle that into my weekly matchup piece that comes out every Thursday, that 10, 11, 14,000 word article. I try to let you know that if you missed the game, hey, maybe these numbers don't look good, but did you see this? That's the case with Nico Collins. He didn't get a 77-yard touchdown. Fire him up. He's good to go. He looked good last night. He's the guy moving forward for this team. Tank Dell, another decent effort. He catches 4 or 5 passes every week for 50 yards. He does nothing. It's unfortunate. He hasn't taken a step this year from last season. It's hard. He's not equipped at all to be a wide receiver 1. So it's as counterintuitive as it is, it's much better for him to have Collins back in the lineup to draw that attention. So now Dell can fill the gaps in, if you will. So maybe we get a little bit of an uptick in production with the return of Nico Collins. Last night, business as usual, the 4 catches for 54 yards. Now let's talk CJ Stroud. And I saw someone in the chat room over at fantasyguru.com this morning say, look, I love CJ Stroud, but I can't start him. And I get it. CJ Stroud last night was fine. Was he fine? I guess he was fine. 257 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. He wasn't fine statistically, and he wasn't even close to fine in the fantasy space. He has become, and this is something that we will watch really closely next year with all of the young quarterbacks, Drake May, Bo Nix, Jayden Daniels. Jeff Mans has said this repeatedly, and that is that it's not what a quarterback does in his first season. It's what the quarterback does in year 2 that's really the key. And while CJ Stroud never looks like the moment overcomes him, he never looks harried, he never looks like he's not in control, his production this year compared to last season is not good. It's gone down. And he was drafted by a lot of people, overdrafted, because at fantasyguru.com we warned about this. He was overdrafted this year with the expectation that he was going to throw for 4,300 yards and 30 touchdowns. It's not happening. And the lack of fantasy production has him at this point in time as a rough quarterback 1. We know it, we feel it, we see it. But at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield's destroying him in points. If you have Mayfield and Stroud, logically you always want to go Stroud, but Bo Nix, logically you want to go Stroud. If I was starting an organization, I'd want Stroud over Nix without question. In the fantasy space. So Stroud he's a rough start now. And it's, if you've made it this far starting him, more power to you, because that means the rest of your team has carried a situation that hasn't been carried by the quarterback. Now, last night, a couple extra storylines before we move on. Last night, where is it? What was it? 5 catches last night? Yeah, 5 catches for 33 yards last night for Dalton Schultz. He catches 3 or 4 passes every game. 5 catches were season best. Hasn't gotten the end zone all season long. He's 7 points a week at the tight end position. That's it. And we saw it again last night. He got 8.3. Woo. Just hasn't happened from this year, and it's not likely to moving forward. Finally, something that has happened all year long, except when he's playing at home, which he does this coming week. Joe Mixon ran for 100 yards and a touchdown. If it wasn't for Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, wouldn't Joe Mixon be the story of the season at the running back position? Maybe you'd throw in McCaffrey because he got hurt. But Joe Mixon goes for 100 yards and a touchdown every game. And in fact, he's averaging more than a touchdown a game. He's been phenomenal. 3 more touchdowns last night, ran for 100 yards, caught a couple of passes. He had 150 yards from scrimmage and 3 touchdowns. He's their offense right now. And while we all expected him at fantasyguru.com to be good, we had him ranked ahead of the consensus. While we expected him to be good this year, we didn't expect him to be a superstar. He's never been more productive in the fantasy space at any point in his career. And he was looking, a little rough coming out of Cincinnati. Lots of workload, the birth certificate. It's like, all right, he's still a solid guy. We're still going to use him as our RB2 and feel great about it. Maybe he's our RB1 depending upon our build. That's okay. I have him as my RB1 on multiple teams because I went wide receiver early. But he has exceeded the wildest of expectations. And he legitimately, 75% of the time, is going for 101. It's just remarkable. So another strong effort for him last night as he continues to just bang away. He has been fantastic. And he's, of all the players up, down, Joe Mixon has been one of the stars because a lot of people did do tight end and 2 wide receivers or 3 wide receivers or 2 wide receivers and a quarterback like at the start of the draft and then took Joe Mixon. Those people that did that, it's like they spent a second-round pick on a running back because Mixon has just been fantastic. All right, we talked yesterday about the situation at the quarterback spot for the Giants. Danny DeVito, a.k.a. Tommy DeVito, will be – do you like those Jersey sub commercials where Danny DeVito's living in the kitchen with his smell of horn thing where he's smelling bacon? Really kind of weird. Anyway, before we talk to Armando Marcelo in about 10 minutes, some other storylines. We got the update from the Raiders that Gardner Minshew will stay as their quarterback. I'm not surprised by that. He should have stayed as the quarterback. He gives them the best chance to win, whether it's Desmond Ridder doesn't. So Gardner Minshew's the quarterback this week. Always a chance he gets pulled if he struggles. We've seen that a lot here, but that's what we got there. Bryce Young is going to be the quarterback again. Dave Canales took a while to mention this. Weird, going into the bye week. They didn't definitively say Bryce Young was our guy coming out of the bye. Young has led the team to a couple of victories. He's been okay. So they're letting him continue to start. Does he give this team the best chance to win over Dalton? Maybe, maybe not. But obviously, if they're looking toward the future, they got to figure out if Bryce Young is the guy or not. And teams make these decisions super quick anymore. He's got the rest of the season basically to convince his team not to take another quarterback next year. And that's the guy from first round, number 1 pick, right? All right, let's go to some of the bigger storylines. Number 1, Jayden Daniels staying with we'll return to the Panthers in the sack. Staying with the Commanders, they're okay. We know that Jayden Daniels has a rib issue. He got hurt in the game. We all knew that. There was the whole week where is he going to play? Is he going to play? Is he going to play? We all know he's dealing with that. If you watch games now, you can see they're still taking care of him on the sidelines. Okay. So Dan Quinn said when he was asked, is Jayden Daniels injured? Dan Quinn said, no, he's not injured. Okay. Which, again, he's playing. So, okay. Everyone's hurt, but he's not injured. Okay. Quinn then went on to say that Daniels struggles, and this is a quote, is on him missing a lot of practice that impacted the offense. Okay, now he suffered the injury in week 7. He was a DNP in a couple of times in week 8. But since then, he's been limited or full participant in every practice since. So either the team has been lying the whole time about him being involved in practice, which I wouldn't put it past the NFL team doing, or he's just not performing that well. And that's okay. It's like, I know, are we giving him cover? My question is, are we giving him cover because he's not hurt? He's playing. Are we giving Jayden Daniels coverage here, blaming the injury for the fact that the offense really hasn't been great? I mean, Daniels hasn't even been on the injury report the last 2 weeks at all. So it's another one of these scenarios. Who's lying? Bottom line is, for me, I think Jayden Daniels is fine. Is he 100%? No, but no one's 100%. We're in the double-digit weeks of a football season. Jayden Daniels not 100%. He's okay. The struggles of late have, I don't think, anything to do with his side issue. I think it's just the struggles of a young quarterback and an offense that's kind of trying to figure things out. Now, a situation that we'll talk to you about right now is the one with the running back situation with the Broncos. We talked about this on the show yesterday. Broke it down. If you missed it, episode 274, check it out. We got more information yesterday on the Monday presser from Sean Payton, and there's a little video that's out there from the press conference. And here's a quote from the video. I wanted to keep talking about Audric Estime. Quote, I want to keep getting the young guy work, and yet Javonte's young and Jaleel. We'll figure it out each week, though, and kind of plan accordingly, unquote. So anyone that hoped that when they added Estime, he was the answer, you got the note over the weekend he wasn't. Anyone that had Williams and held on or is thinking about adding Williams, well, he's not the answer either because the head coach basically just said we're hot-handing this thing the rest of the way. And this is you can't say it's to the detriment of the football team because obviously the Broncos are playing good football and Sean Payton knows what he's doing. But really, you shouldn't be using 3 running backs. It doesn't, you talk to the actual running backs themselves, and they will tell you they need to get in a rhythm. And when they don't know, oh, this is my series, this is your series, this is your snap, this is my snap. If you have a goal line guy, between the 20s guy, and a third down guy, maybe that works. But they don't do that, right? They really don't do that. So this 3-headed monster that they have kind of been utilizing since last season, even though the players were different, it looks like it's going to continue. The Broncos backfield is a mess, and the head coach is admitting we're going to make it a mess the rest of the way based upon what we see. So that is not a good report for anyone hoping to utilize any of these guys. This week is different. Bye weeks, bye Mageddon, right? I get it. But not good. Just not good. Adam Thielen and Jonathan Brooks will both return. Well, Thielen will return from his hamstring injury, and Brooks will make his first appearance from his knee injury this week for the Panthers. It's finally happening for those people that have been waiting for Jonathan Brooks. This is probably, 7 weeks after some people had hoped, 4 or 5 weeks after people kind of expected. We're finally going to get Brooks out on the football field. What will Brooks' role be with Hubbard? We don't know. When Hubbard signed his contract, that 4-year extension a couple of weeks ago, we talked long. I spent 5 minutes talking about this scenario. You can find that on the old shows here on the Fantasy Network of Fantasy Sports Daily, Elite Plus. And by the way, I'll put it up on the screen as we're talking here. Still get that deal, folks. $99 rest of the way. All the football product we do, everything, DFS, seasonal wagering, all of it, $99. We talked about the backfield what it would look like when Hubbard signed the big contract. Brooks, they took forever to activate Brooks on a game day. Forever. They wanted to make sure he was healthy. Really difficult. You can't start Brooks this week no matter what. You just can't. You're desperate if you're starting him. Maybe this situation ends up he plays 25 snaps and he touches the ball 12 times. But my advice right now is do not be planning to start Jonathan Brooks. You're desperate if you are, and maybe you are because of the bye weeks. Hubbard is still a start, and we'll see. We'll see how it looks, how Brooks looks, how he's utilized, all that. But to reiterate the point I made a couple weeks ago, Hubbard's been a running back 1 with a bullet this season. He's done a really good job for the Panthers and a really good job for us in the fantasy space. There's not an overarching need to, take his workload away from him at this point in time. His teammate Adam Thielen finally going to get activated here and get a chance to play through his hamstring injury. He missed a lot longer than anticipated with his injury. We've all talked about it at FG. We've talked about it here on the show, reiterating that point. Thielen has a very high likelihood of being the wide receiver 1 on this team the rest of the season. What does that look like? There were moments last year, especially at the start of last season, where Thielen was catching 5 or 6 passes every week. So, there's a hope that he and Bryce Young can rekindle some of that. Thielen is best viewed as a wide receiver 3-4 flex kind of guy. The hope is he probably gets 6, 7, 8 targets. He catches 4, 5, 6 balls, gets you 65 yards. He is an 8 to 12 point a week kind of guy in a PPR setup. That's what he should be looked at as. Could it be more than that as the leader with Deontay Johnson gone, Jonathan Mingo gone? Yeah, he could be more than that. Could there be those spike weeks if he's catching 6 for 60 and then you get the touchdown? Well, now we're talking. Now we're up at almost 20 points. So he should not be on the waiver wire in the majority of leagues. I don't know if it fits your league and your team roster build or not. I added him myself last week in a couple of places. And I'm feeling ready to return for the Panthers. Nick Chubb is Kevin Stefanski said this about Nick Chubb. They had a short turnaround of Thursday Night Football, and that played a role in Nick Chubb playing just 22 snaps against the Saints. Maybe. As we talked about yesterday on the show, Chubb had 11 carries for 50 yards. He was fine. Doesn't quite look like the guy that we saw before the injury. Totally expected with the knee injury he dealt with. The offensive line is not the same as it was back in his heyday. You look at this matchups coming down the pipe here for the Browns the next 4 games. Pittsburgh, at Denver, at Pittsburgh, Kansas City. Ugh. So even with all the teams on bye, Nick Chubb is not a desperation play, but Nick Chubb is a rough play. Remember, Pittsburgh, Denver, Pittsburgh, KC. So you can't really be looking at Nick Chubb as anything other than a flex option. And with those matchups, not a good one moving forward. A couple of updates at the wide receiver spot before we visit with Armando Marsal. Number 1, Gabe Davis is out for the season with the meniscus tear. Who cares? Can't believe Doug Peterson hasn't been fired yet, to be fair. After getting that boat race by the Lions over the weekend. Darnell Mooney, according to an ESPN report, the hamstring injury that caused him to miss time in Week 11. not serious. So there is a chance he plays in week 12. That's not confirmed. It's still early in the week, but Mooney could play this week, which is really good news. And then finally, on Monday, Mike Evans returned to practice. Obviously, he's been missing time with the hamstring injury. The reports were all very strongly suggestive of Evans returning in week 12. What we heard and saw yesterday from Evans makes it seem that that's very realistic, that he'll be back in action this week against the Giants. We'll follow the injury reports. Hamstrings are notorious for flaring back up again. But right now, it does seem like Mike Evans has got a legitimate chance to return to action for the Bucs in week number 12. Remember, go to fantasyguru.com. Get that sale right now, $99. Subscribe, top right of the corner of the page. DFS football, seasonal football, wagering football, all three of them, $99. You can get Armando Marsal, our next guest. You can get his articles about seasonal. You can get his articles about DFS. You can get access to him in Discord and have him answer all your questions, because I know he loves doing that. We all love doing that over in the Discord at fantasyguru.com. So let's bring him in right now. He comes in every Tuesday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. It is Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Armando, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ray. How about yourself? I'm liking the hoodie. Liking the hoodie. That's a shark, right?
My kind of like, it's actually from my lady, but it's kind of because of the kids, because it's like cartoony.
Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
Thanks.
I like it.
Kind of cartoonish, and I'm a big shark guy, so it kind of works out. And
yeah, me
got
too.
some stars there.
Love sharks, so
yeah,
I instantly noticed. I'm like, oh, that's a shark.
Yeah, all right. What favorite shark? Do you have a favorite shark, Armando?
I'm fascinated by tiger sharks. Like I just am. Those things they're huge. Yeah, and mako sharks. They're those mako sharks are really fast. But yeah, whenever Shark Week comes on, or whenever there's some shark show on TV, I check that out.
Yeah, we have a big thing. We have the Red Triangle here in California, out to the Farallones and Año Nuevo and the Bay. So there's always shark attacks here. I go every year. There's a great white shark research group that gives presentations. I always go with my mom. So I watch every Shark Week episode for my entire life too. So, and you know this, I think you know this, and I don't know if I ever mentioned it. I actually went shark tooth hunting.
Really?
Like 3 months ago. Yeah, I'll have to tell the story. We went shark tooth hunting. There's a place out in Bakersfield where you can go, and it's all the teeth are anywhere from like 2 to 6 million years old. They're all fossilized shark teeth. And so we went up there. My lady took me, and we went and got like 25 teeth. They're all, like half an inch. They're really small. But they find megalodon teeth there. They find like 25, 30 of them a year. The big.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun.
Wild. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'll have to bring on my little shark display here one day to show everyone.
Yes.
Maybe I'll bring it on next week when you're on.
Do it.
We're able to pick up. Before we lose everyone, because I don't know if anyone enjoys sharks as much as we do.
That's included in the all-in package as well, right there, guys.
Yeah, that is.
Shark conversations.
Shark conversations. There's pictures of my Mustang burning out in Discord. Like, you can find things that are interesting over there. So yeah, subscribe in the top right corner of the site. Let's talk some football. And there's a lot we can talk to you about. We obviously bring you in ostensibly to talk waiver wires. We'll answer some comments and questions from the folks here in the Discord too. I wanted to get your thoughts on Anthony Richardson, because there are obviously a lot of leagues where he's available if you're in a one quarterback league, and the numbers look good from his first return to starting. The performance looked pretty good. Like, he still made some off time throws and everything, but overall he played pretty well. Is he now somebody that we're running to the waiver wire to add? And are we confident in starting him, or is that just a really good game from a guy that the jury is still out on?
Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned, he looked better than he has pretty much all season, right? Like, he still made some bad throws. He still made some poor decisions when he's throwing the football, missed some receivers. But first time this year that he's completed over 50% of his passes. He completed 67%. I know that, the game that he left early, I think it was against the Steelers, he completed 3 or 4 passes. But any game with more than 5 pass attempts, this was the first time he's completed, over 50% of those. So he looked much better. We saw the rushing, right? We saw the rushing. And I think what was really impressive was that 2-minute drill to get down to, for the game-winning touchdown there that he rushed in for. He ran that really well. So I liked what I saw. I think this was more the Richardson that a lot of people expected. Am I running out and saying, all right, I'm going to get him and I'm going to start him confidently? No, not yet. I want to see a little bit more of this on a consistent basis. I do think, he could pick up where he left off. He's playing against Lions this week. I think, they're going to be chasing points. Lions are top 5, or went into last week, top 5 in passing yards allowed per game. So there's a path to success here again for Richardson. I do think if you're hurting at the position, or if you've been streaming the position, and he's out there, I do think you should add him. He does have that rushing upside that he has 2 rushing touchdowns this past weekend, so he does have that arsenal in his game. And in a super flex 2-quarterback league, I highly doubt he's out there. If he is, in that instance, I'm running out and getting him and paying a high dollar for him in that kind of format.
I mentioned we broke down Monday Night Football here earlier on the show. If anyone missed it, just rewind and all that. And I talked about Trey Lance, and it's like, let's say we're in a super flex or 2-quarterback league. Maybe he's still out there. Like in our super flex league, he was added last week, but maybe he's still out there. Is that smart? I mean, Cooper Rush didn't do anything last night. The Cowboys aren't going anywhere. Mike McCarthy came out after the game and said, I should have played Lance a little bit. Is Lance worth an addition?
A speculation ad. Like, I guess that's how I would do it. You can add him. Wouldn't add him with the intention of starting him right away, even if he does indeed get some opportunities, or if he is named a starter at some point this season. I would want to see, what he looks like first, how he operates in this offense and things like that. But I do think in deeper leagues and, if you're hurting at the position, if you're looking for a 3rd or 4th quarterback, I definitely think he's someone you can add. Just, again, if you have the extra roster space.
Armando Marsala, fantasyguru.com. Let's talk a little bit about the running back spot, Armando. Things changed in Chicago because they changed coaches. They made a move there with the OC, and the offense, wasn't spectacular, but they frankly should have won the football game against the Packers. And, Caleb Williams looked a little bit better. He got rid of the ball quickly. He had some rushing yards. The offense kind of worked. One of the other big changes we saw was a more heavily involved Roschon Johnson. He's got that touchdown, had the 10 carries. Is Johnson anything but a handcuff ad for the Swift owners, or is there standalone value for Johnson? Because this question comes up a lot. People see the touchdown, they get really excited. Are you anticipating Johnson touching the ball enough to be a standalone addition?
So I don't want to say that he offers standalone value just yet, but I definitely think he's somebody you want to add. What we saw this weekend, we saw him a lot more in on early downs and short yardage situations. We did see some short yardage situations. I think I pulled the numbers up. So in 10 of 11 snaps where the Bears had 3 yards to go for a first down, he was in those 10 of 11 snaps. So he's in that short yardage situation. We saw him in the goal line as well. I still think that he's going to be touchdown dependent right now. But I do think he's a strong handcuff, and I do think we're going to see his role increase. And I think what this means is just bad news for DeAndre Swift moving forward.
Martin Marsal of FG. Let's talk a little about the Raiders backfield. We kind of hope, because they were making changes too, we kind of hope that the Raiders would come out and maybe Zamir White would get an opportunity, because at the end of the season last year, he was very productive. We've seen a lot of Alexander Madison. He's just not it. It's fine. He is what he is, but hoping White would be more involved. He was more involved, but he got hurt. Now, the thing is, Alexander Madison also got hurt. And we know Amir Abdullah scored a touchdown, but Amir Abdullah is a satellite back. He's not an every down back. They've got Dylan Laub there too. I kind of get the sense that there's a little bit more concern with Madison than White's injury. If White is still out there, do you care on the waiver wire or no?
I would add him, but not necessarily with the intention of starting him, unless you're in a bind and you're looking for, a running back 3 flex option, I think just based on opportunities, he really didn't get anything done. His role did increase this week. He was in there in early downs as well. We saw him a lot of 1st and 2nd before the injury. And like you mentioned, the thing about White was he was never ruled out. He was listed questionable, but never ruled out. He never came back in the game, but he was never ruled out. Madison was ruled out right away. So I agree. I think that the quad injury for White doesn't appear to be as significant. But do I want to start White? No, I don't want to depend on White, especially in crunch time now with games are meaningful and you got to win and, a lot of people in the playoff run or playoff hunt, I would add him based on volume alone, but not someone I'm excited to start by any means.
Armando, what about Rome Odunze? He came into the season with really high expectations. There have been games where he's vanished from the offense. There's been games where he's been a big part of the offense. I bet he's been added and dropped maybe a couple of times in some leagues. He's coming off a nice effort here. And again, the offense being different now with the OC change with the Bears, 6 catches last time out. If he's on the waiver wire, I assume you're going to say pick him up. Is he a wide receiver 3? Is he a wide receiver 4? Is he just depth? How do you view Rome Odunze?
I think he's a potential plug and play wide receiver 3/flex option kind of play. One thing that has stood out, so I have the numbers here. So at the beginning of the season, we saw 14, 15, 23, 10, 21, 8. Those are target shares. Over the last 4 games, we saw 30, 19, 26, 32. So we've kind of seen a little bit more of a consistent role when it comes to the Odunze. Now, the production hasn't really necessarily followed with the opportunities. We've seen, wide receiver 53, wide receiver 22, wide receiver 60, and wide receiver 32. So I do think there's volatility there, but the role and the opportunities appear to be more consistent. And I think that could lead to more consistent production down the stretch. I definitely think if he's out there, you add him. And I mean, a viable flex play this week if you're in a bind, right?
Well, certainly, yes, I think so. And again, everyone's going to be in a bye, it seems like, this week.
Yeah.
Thank you, NFL. Let's have 2 guys on bye. Let's have no one on bye. Let's have 6 on bye. I don't know. Whatever. Consistency is never a word that has ever been associated with Christian Watson. No. Christian Watson only had 4 targets last game. They only threw the ball 17 times to the Packers, but we all know he caught 4 for 150 yards. And this is going to remind everyone Christian Watson is probably on a ton of waiver wires because he just hasn't done anything, right? Does last week's showing change anything? Is he the exact same guy? Is he just a younger, slightly better Marquez Valdez-Scantling? Can you ever start Christian Watson in any matchup and feel good about it, Armando?
No, you know what he's a big playmaker. Like, that's what he is. He showed that last week. He's had a couple of games where he's had 2 or 3 receptions for 60+ yards. Like, he's just one of those that's going to give you a lot of yards on a couple of catches, but there's going to be some really frustrating weeks, some really poor performances, some potential goose eggs. Like that is very, very, very possible with a receiver like Watson. And I think you need to know what kind of receiver you're investing in when you haven't. You have to understand that there's a lot of upside, but there's also a lot of downside. And if you like that volatility, if you're into that kind of volatility, sure. I prefer a safer floor. We're going to talk about another receiver shortly. I think that I heard you talk about before. He gives us a safer floor. I feel much better with him than I do with someone like Watson on my roster.
Is that Adam Thielen? Is that who?
Yes.
Yes. I mentioned my thoughts a couple minutes ago. What are your thoughts on Adam Thielen?
I agree with you 100%. Exactly what you said, right? Like, I feel like he could emerge as that number 1 guy there. What does that mean? We don't know. But I think in PPR settings, you're looking at a reasonable floor of 8 to 12 fantasy points on a weekly basis with potential for more. We saw some big performances from him last, season. At the beginning of the season, he was one of the hottest receivers in the NFL. Is he going to go back to that form? Maybe not. Maybe not. But can he give us 8 to 12 fantasy points? Sure. It's like another Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, it's not going to be overly exciting, but you're going to get some production, right? So that's kind of where I'm viewing Thielen as well.
Marlon Marsal joins us every Tuesday here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Each of the last 2 games, this receiver has caught 7 balls for 90 yards. Each of the last 2 games, he's seen 11 targets. Each of the last 2 games, he was not the number 1 guy on his team, according to anyone's rankings. It's Jauan Jennings. And, there's a lot being made of the fact that he dragged everyone for a first down on the Seahawks that one play, but he also was making contested catches throughout the game. He played a really good football game last time out. In fact, the easiest thing he did all game was catch that touchdown where he wasn't covered. There's still leagues where he's on the waiver wire. Do we add him? You're going to say add Jauan Jennings. Yeah. Who is Jauan Jennings? Is he clearly surpassed Pearsall at this point? Has he passed Deebo Samuel at this point for you? Like, where does he fit in the pecking order, whether Kittle's there or not for the Niners?
So I still think he's behind Samuel. I think they're different receivers. Obviously, we know that. We know Samuel does a lot of other things like running the football, and they're just different receivers. But do I think he's ahead of Pearsall? Yeah, I do. And this is one thing I've been saying for a couple of weeks. Like, they kept Jennings around for a reason. He knows this offense. He's someone that they like. And he's they used him a little bit different this week, and so I don't want to say he's the next Brandon Ayuk, but they're going to continue to use him. And I'm not expecting a 30+% target share like he's had the last couple of weeks, like 32 and 33 are the last 2 weeks. But I do think he's going to be a consistent factor. I'm viewing him as a wide receiver 3 moving forward with wide receiver 2. There's going to be weeks where you fall into that wide receiver, top 12 in fantasy production. We saw it this past weekend. We've seen it before when he had that massive game. So I do think that he offers that kind of upside. But I'm comfortably starting him as a wide receiver 3 moving forward here. I'm not expecting 11 targets every week, but I think anywhere between 6 and 8, 6 and 9 targets is very feasible for someone like Jennings in this offense.
To get 9 targets, Nick Westbrook-Ikini needs to play 3 games.
Yes.
Now he also scores. He's got a touchdown in 5 or 6 games. Like it's pretty ridiculous that his touchdown rate is absurd. Now again, he has no real role in this offense, and he simply doesn't see the ball. And he had that 98-yard touchdown because he ran past the guy, and then the guy fell over. Like he didn't do anything, but still, Nick Westbrook-Ikini. You look at the numbers, and people are tempted because of the touchdowns. But again, there's no volume here, Armando. So general thoughts on him, and putting him against names like Thielen and Watson. What do you do with NWI?
I just look at him as a very touchdown dependent. I will say, so he's had 6 targets in 2 of the last 3 games. But outside of that, let's look at the receptions. 1, 2, 2, and you got 5, 3, 2. Like he's just very touchdown dependent. That's what you're hoping for with NWI here. And if you want to invest in that, I think there's a lot of volatility. If he doesn't score, he's going to get you very low scoring. I prefer investing in someone like Thielen. I prefer obviously adding Odunze. Even Pearsall, that I've been asked, do I cut him? I'm not cutting Pearsall. I'm not. If you added him, you hold him. And I still think there's going to be a nice role there for him moving forward in this offense. And you have guys like Kittle that are dinged up. You have guys like Samuel that are dinged up. But to answer your question, no, NWI in deeper formats, right? I have him in a 14-team PPR league where you start, I believe it's 3 flexes. That's kind of where I'm, looking to get someone like NWI.
2 words for you. Taysom Hill.
My reaction is always going to be that same reaction, Ray. Oh, man. I mean, where are you going to start him? Tight end or quarterback? That's the question. It depends on where you have to start him, right? Like, I mean, look, he had a career day. He had a career day. That's just what it is. He's going to see the opportunities. He's gotten, I think it's 14 PPR points in 3 of his last 5 games. Like, you're going to get that kind of production. If you can have him at the tight end spot, sure. If you have to start him at quarterback, I don't want to do that. Really depends on where your league, where your league setups or your league format, wherever your platform has them listed. But he's the gift that keeps on giving. Like for those who are investing in him,
we had him listed the last 2 weeks, last week and this week, 10 and 11. Is a top 10 guy over at fantasyguru.com. And we all made the case, back in week 10. Here are the 7 reasons why it's going to happen for Taysom Hill. He had the touchdown called back on a penalty, but they basically stopped using him after the first quarter. He like 5 of his 6 touches were in the first quarter. They stopped using him. So then we head into week 11, and here's everything that we thought would happen in week 10. And then you hear the coach after the game say he's one of the best players in football. Well, if he's one of the best players in football, why didn't you use him for 3 quarters of the previous game? That's the problem I have with Taysom Hill, amongst many problems I have with Taysom Hill. There's no way to predict whether he's going to be utilized or produce. So if anyone that adds Taysom Hill, and obviously he's not going to be on a waiver wire after last week, don't ask Armando and I, should you start him? Don't ask what the expectations are, and don't start him this week, have him score 6 points, and then bench him next week. If you're picking up Taysom Hill, he just got to stay in your lineup, and you just got to ride it out, right?
Yeah, you have to jump on that roller coaster and go up, go down, wherever it's going. You stay on that coaster the rest of the season, right? Like that's kind of what you're doing, unless he's out or unless you see a massive decline in production. But like I mentioned, like he's scored at least 14 fantasy points in 3 of the last 5 games, but he's also had some down weeks, and that's kind of the roller coaster. It's just like Watson. It's just like the NWI. Like these are guys that are going to be up and down, and that's at this point you got to figure what fits best with your roster construction. I think people overlook that, right? Like you cannot have Watson, Hill, and NWI in the same roster, in the same lineup, and expect to have a consistent week-to-week production team. Like you can't. So just does Hill fit with what you're working with right now? And I think that's really the question you have to ask yourself before putting a bid on him or starting him or anything like that.
Ramona, what about Will Dissly? His floor is pretty consistent. There's not a ceiling there because he's not Mr. Touchdown or high volume. But we all thought there'd be a tight end that would step forward for the Chargers this year. We didn't think it'd be Will Dissly, but it's been Will Dissly.
I mean, it's been consistent, right? The opportunities, you're looking at it now. So 5, 11, 7, 3, 6, 6. That's been since, week 6? Those are the opportunities. We've seen this team kind of pass the ball a little bit more. We've seen them open up their playbook a little bit more. and he's taking full advantage of that. I think if you're looking for a floor, I feel better about him. I know he doesn't give you the hill ceiling, but I feel better about Disley on a week-to-week basis. I feel like I got a safer floor with someone like Disley, and I do think his role has been pretty consistent. Look over the last, 5 games, 30, 23, 12, 33, 18% target share, so pretty consistent there. I think Disley's role is here to stay, and like you mentioned, we thought it was going to be Hurts that got this kind of role, but we're seeing it with Disley. And it's working for the Chargers.
A final tight end to ask you about, Luke Schoonmaker. I mentioned we broke down this game earlier in the show today, and whether it's Ferguson or now Schoonmaker, like they don't really have a second wide receiver they can lean on here with the Cowboys. It's the tight end spot. Is Schoonmaker someone that you would consider picking up with all the buys this week? Because Ferguson had a concussion last night, and it's going to be tough for him to get cleared for this week.
Yeah, I think he's very viable. I will say that we saw Spanford also involved. I think he had 5 targets. He played like 3 fewer snaps or 4 fewer snaps than Schoonmaker. They were both involved. But I think Schoonmaker is going to get them. He's going to be that favorite of the two to see the majority of the opportunities. Like we saw this week. They played similar snaps, but one had 5 targets, the other tight end had 10 targets. But I do think they're both going to be involved. But I think also depends on what they do at the quarterback position, right? If it's Lance, I think it could change things up because we saw Rush kind of target these two, but is Lance going to do the same thing? So I would add Schoonmaker. It's going to be a good matchup here against Washington. I think they'll be able to move the ball there through the air with Washington. So if you're in need of a tight end, I think he's someone you can consider. But he would be my third option between the 3 we just spoke about.
Yeah, Brevin Spanford, don't become a thing. That's
no,
right.
That's right.
Is it right? The first name's got a Y in it. Then there's 2 N's. There's a dash. Yeah.
BSF.
Yeah,
that's
there
it.
you go.
That's it.
We're gonna have to do
listen, BSF. That's it.
Put on the back of the jersey. Armando Marsala, fantasyguru.com. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube Live, you can leave comments and ask questions. So let's address some of those, Armando. Preston F. jumped right in at the start of the show. And this is a question that's starting to come up now, and it's a good question, but it's difficult to get a real answer to. Here's his question. He's looking ahead to the playoffs, which are weeks 15 to 17 for most people. I wrote out my running backs and my wide receivers, who they have on, matchups and all that. So he's planning ahead, which is really good to do. Is there a strategy for the playoffs and matchups, or just play the rankings? So my thought, I'll say my thought real quickly here. I understand looking forward to the playoffs. I think it's good to do that. It's very difficult to do. It's a month away. Like so much can change. So I'm not making roster moves predicated on that. I wouldn't, if I made the playoffs, I'm probably done a pretty good job managing my roster all season long. I don't think I necessarily want to change up my strategy and my scheduling of players and all that. I wouldn't focus more heavily on the matchups in the playoffs than I would in week 9 or week 6. That's my thoughts. What do you have to say, Armando?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not setting my lineups, or I'm not planning on who I'm starting in week 15 or 17. So much can change. I say this all year because when they ask me rest of season questions, the NFL is really a week-to-week game. Like it really should be played as a week-to-game. You don't have to, change your lineup every week, but it does change on a weekly basis. One defensive player can change the entire outlook and dynamic of one defense. We saw that in the past when TJ Watt is now with the Steelers. It changes the entire dynamic of that defense, and we see it on offenses as well. So being proactive and looking ahead, sure. And you could write things down, you could write notes, but each and every week, go back and check on those notes to see if everything is still the same. Make any edits to those notes. And that's what I would do if you really want to plan like that. But am I making roster moves? Am I stashing a defense for week 15 or week 16? No. Am I stashing a second quarterback or a second tight end for those weeks? I'm not doing that. I'm still using my roster spots. I'm still using my bench spots, for this week and maybe next week and things like that. But looking that far ahead, just too many things change too quickly. We're seeing it, systems change when coaches are fired. We saw with Chicago this past week, right? Like it just changes everything. So view it as a week to week, and there's nothing with, planning ahead, but don't make moves for, 15, 16, 17 weeks, week 16, 15, 17.
John G's got a question about, and this is going to come up a ton over at FG, and it's going to come up all week long. Everyone's on bye, 6 teams on bye. John G's got a question. He's currently got Estime as his flex option. Talked yesterday about the backfield with the Broncos. Talked today about the fact that Sean Payton came out and basically said, we're going to spin the wheel of fun and see what happens. So there's no real plan. So you can't feel good about Estime. Not that he won't end up being in the flex for some people this week, but you can't feel good about it. So John's got him there now. So we asked the question. Here's some guys he could add. Xavier Worthy, who doesn't know how wide or long a football field is because he can't figure out how to keep his feet in bounds. Devin Singletary, who's the backup running back. Trey Benson, who's the backup running back. Cam Akers, who's the backup running back. Gus Edwards, who's the backup running back. So a lot of backup running backs. A wide receiver in Xavier Worthy, who has had one good half of production in about 6 weeks. And Audric Estime. You can answer this easy one, Armando.
I think it was one good quarter, right? I think most of it was that first quarter.
Yeah.
No, look. So if you're looking for high upside and big ceiling with a very low floor, Worthy would be your guy. Otherwise, I mean, it's between Estime and Edwards, right? Like, I feel like you're going to get opportunities there. Don't trust any of these guys. It's a really bad situation. So it really depends on what you're looking for, right? So upside, Worthy, a floor, I'd go with either Estime or Edwards. I think the Broncos are going to continue to roll the hot hand. I really do that. They think that's what they're going to do there.
Pate asked the following. Someone dropped Jameson Williams, which can happen with bye weeks and such. So Pate's wondering, should I use my number one waiver priority? We don't know anything other than that. So I'm going to assume in general, the answer is probably yes. I hate waiver wire priority leagues. I hate those. Is Williams enough to spend that number one priority here? I mean, I guess it all depends on your matchup this week, where you're at in the standings, what your receiving core looks like. Like, there's a lot that goes into answering this question, Armando.
Yeah, I would say yes. In a vacuum, the answer is yes. I think you don't find that kind of talent in a lot of leagues outside of very shallow leagues, where a receiver like Williams is out there.
All right, let's see. Here, I'm scrolling through. Okay. Hal says he loves Sharks. So Hal likes Sharks. Angelo says San Jose Sharks. Good answer, Angelo, because that is obviously my local team here. John G, who we just answered a question about, says his least favorite shark is the loan shark. Armando, have you ever used a loan shark?
No.
Tell the truth, Armando.
No. Not even when I used to play pool a lot.
Okay. Were you good at pool?
Yeah, I would say I was okay.
So you had your own stick. Did you have one stick?
Yes, I did have my own Q stick.
Yes. Too, or
yeah, I had a Q stick. It was I think a Viking, or something like that.
Roll it together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have a little bag.
Yeah. All right. I like it. Mike Van Sickle's favorite shark was Owen Nolan. Great shark. Love watching Owen Nolan play. I don't know, Armando, you're not a big hockey guy though, right? Yourself?
No.
Yeah.
No.
He was a guy that was an all-star, team leader, captain. He could score 40 goals a year. He'd punch you in the face. Like, he was one of those all-around kind of guys. Okay. A lot of fun. I'll ask the question here. How long before the 49ers shut down CMC based on their record? And I heard Jeff Manns address this on the Elite Sports Show yesterday, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern on Sirius XM. People were asking him on the show about the Bengals, actually. But same thing here with the Niners. Teams don't shut players down. I mean, it doesn't – I know we get used to guys getting rested in weeks 18 or whatever because they're looking into the playoffs, but guys don't normally get shut down in the NFL if their team isn't very good. Or am I just living on some other planet, Armando?
No, and they're 5-5.
They're in the playoff hunt. Yep.
I mean, Arizona's number one in that division, 6-4. They're by no means are they out of it. I don't see them shutting him down unless, week 17, week 18, maybe, like if the season is completely done. And even then, this is not the NBA. I think that's where you see more like NBA teams shutting, players down and things like that. Not in the NFL. I wouldn't be too concerned right now with that. So I'd be looking at, he hasn't looked as explosive, but the opportunity is there. I think the opportunities are going to continue to be there. He's an every week starter for now. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think they have a good matchup this week, don't they?
Well, they have a good matchup every week. They just blow the game in the fourth quarter.
I mean, that was bad.
I mean, to Armando's point, the Cardinals are 6-4. The Rams, Seahawks, and Niners are all 5-5. Like, the whole division's the same. Like, are the Niners going to be out of it, even if they play 500 the rest of the way? Are they out of it in week 17 and 18? Probably not. So that's one advantage that they have there. Senor Rojo asked the question. Roschon Johnson, who we discussed earlier. Audric Estime, who we discussed earlier. Tough question. I think the answer is you want both. Because, again, a lot of people do this where they want it's A or B, my roster. Okay. Let's give the answer to the question for Senor Rojo. Is it Roschon or Estime? But really, it's both.
I look at this as you're kind of swapping players, right? I would go with Johnson because I do think Johnson's going to get some goal line opportunities. I do think Estime will too. But if I have to choose one, it's going to be Johnson. But I agree with you 100%. I think the right answer is stashing both these running backs. These are the kind of backs you want to have on the bench now moving forward, right? Like if you're trying to plan ahead, even if you're not using any of them, I think these are the kind of backs you want to have there on your bench because one injury can elevate their opportunities in a significant way.
Yeah, I think it's very important. Like, you don't want Nick Westbrook-Akine. Drop him and take these two guys.
Correct. 100%.
Yeah, you don't want Mike Williams. He could be something great. Drop him. You don't want him. You want these two running backs. Michael Wilson, drop him. You want these two running backs.
Correct.
That's the thing. Like a lot of people, and it's really odd to me because I always say when people ask the question, you want running backs. It's very rare that a wide receiver who's getting 4 targets a week all of a sudden gets 10. Happens all the time where the running back that's getting 6 gets 16 touches because the guy ahead of him gets hurt. So it's okay to have 6 running backs and 5 receivers, right? It's okay you don't have to be balanced out and have 6 of each or whatever it might be. You agree with that? You're nodding your head, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like that. I was even thinking of other receivers. I'm like, even MVS at this point, like unless you absolutely need to use him this week, or even Watson to a certain extent, right? Like even Christian Watson, where it's like a hit or miss receiver, unless you need to use one of these receivers, I think keeping the running back depth or adding the running back depth makes a lot more sense because look at all the receivers that are out there right now. It's easier to go out there and get a receiver that you can plug and play in an emergency than it is getting a running back. Like the waivers are much drier when it comes to the running back position than it is to the receiver position. So just something to think about, when you're planning your bench, down the stretch.
To answer a final question for our buddy Jim Armando. What's up, guys? Full point PPR. He's a Hunt owner. And he also has Tajay Spears, who's got the head injury right now. He's being offered Tony Pollard, so he would secure the backfield and obviously get the starter with the Titans, for either Ridley or Quentin Johnston. He lists his receivers there, Chase Adams, A.J. Brown, Slayton, Pearsall, so he's got a good depth there. He can afford to give up one of these receivers. I know that Quentin Johnston is continually scoring touchdowns, but he catches 2 or 3 passes a week, and it's really touchdown-driven with him. He's come a long way from where he was at the start of the season, but I would rather have Ridley than Johnston personally. So I'd be totally fine giving Johnson to get Pollard. It gets me the Titans backfield, even with the concerns I have over Pollard and is he going to make it to the finish line as a lead running back. I think this is a deal that makes sense to me, Armando. What say you?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. First, shout out to Jim C. He's a good guy, listener of the podcast. He always leaves some comments and stuff. Shout out to Jim there. Yes, 100%. I would prefer giving away Quentin Johnston for Pollard. The only thing, are you going to be comfortable starting? Because if you do this, you have to be comfortable starting 2 Titans every week, right? So you have to start Pollard and you have to be okay with that. I would make the move. I would be okay with that. I think they play, they both have their solidified roles. So I would be okay with doing that. But as a fantasy manager, you would have to be okay with doing that as well.
Yep.
If you are okay with doing that, I would go ahead and make this move. I agree with you. I think this solidifies your backfield. And you have, the handcuff already. You don't have to worry about it. So there you go.
Yeah, he lists also that he has Taylor, Kyron Williams, and Zamir White. So now you would have Taylor, Kyron Williams, and Tony Pollard, which is so much better. That looks really good. So I agree with you there on Armando on James.
And you could even make a move now for like if you have Hunt and find a Pacheco owner, maybe they have a receiver that you could and now you have your backfield settled and your wide receiver settled.
I lied. Let's have one more question. Jack threw one in here right at the very end. He's got a bunch of guys on bye this week, including Derrick Henry. So he's being offered Kenneth Walker and DJ Moore for Derrick Henry. We trading Derrick Henry even if the return is good?
I don't want to trade away Derrick Henry, especially if you're just trying to do it for a bye week, like fill in bye week replacement. Like I feel like if you don't win this week, if you're completely out of it, like sure, but at 6-5, I don't think that's going to be the case in a lot of fantasy football leagues. So no, I don't like to make a trade. It's a good return, but I don't like to make a trade for just a 1 week rental. I avoid those trades with as much as I could.
I think the real issue too is, like I said, it's a fair trade, but is DJ Moore going to give you 40 yards a week or is it 75 and a touchdown? Like, you look better, but we just don't, there's too much volatility there for me in this trade offer, Armando.
Well, and then not only that, like, are you going to do you comfortably start more over London and Shakir every week? I don't.
Right.
Like, I feel like London is a safer bet. I feel
Agreed.
Shakir gives us a much safer floor.
Agreed.
So you're essentially doing Walker for Henry if Moore's going to hit your bench after this week, right?
Yeah.
And in that instance, it doesn't make sense. That's not a trade you would ever consider. So I understand this. It gives you depth at the receiver position, but it's a volatile depth.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Again, he's here every Tuesday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. He then goes on throughout the week to write DFS articles, to do live streams, including tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern. I assume you're on tonight, Armando?
Yes, I'll be on tonight with Russell Clay and Tyler Beaker. We'll be talking waivers, answering questions just like we do here, and have a good time.
And you got some basketball stuff dropping?
Yes, right? I got my Shishi is coming out today. I'll be in Discord from an hour before lock. I'm not sure if it locks at 7 or 7:30 today. Honestly, I haven't looked when they locks, but I'm always on an hour. Me and Fancy will be in there today answering questions, and my Shishi will be live by 4 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 the latest. So make sure to keep an eye on that. And of course, we have all the NFL stuff, the snap share, the red zone review, the staff picks, the DFS breakdown, the Mind of Marcel podcast. That'll go live Thursday and every Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. Chris Rose and myself, we are on for, the show says an hour. We go over a little bit over the hour. I'm not gonna lie to you. We break down the entire slate with updated news and things like that. And then Discord up until lock until 1 p.m. Eastern. So every Sunday. It's a busy Sunday, but a fun one each and every week, Ray.
It is. It's always a busy Sunday, but it's fun as long as the people don't drink. So you're talking to them in the morning, so that's good. They're not drunk yet, like they get throughout the day. Don't forget to go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Okay. When you go there, you can get the MVP package, which includes hockey and basketball. So all of Armando and the crew's basketball work, you can get there in the MVP package. You can also sign up, as you see on the screen there, for the football package, and it's special discount right now, $99 the rest of the season. You get all of our football, all the seasonal, all the DFS, all the wagering, which means you get all of Armando Marsal, Tyler Beaker, Russell Clay, all of their work besides the Super Bowl betting guide for the rest of the season. So go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Armando, thanks for your time today. Good luck doing the basketball and the football the rest of the week, and we will talk to you here on this show a week from today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me on. Everyone have a great day.
He's Armando Marsal. I'm Ray Flowers. Thanks for watching Fantasy Sports Daily. We'll be back tomorrow. Justin Fensterman and Rich Miletto at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.